Oh man, it's good to be back again with another edition of the Good News Podcast. I don't even know how long has it been since the last one.
Definitely over a month.
Yeah, over a month. So a month and a bit. Just to clarify to anybody who was wondering, um, I was actually just away for a while on a trip around Europe. It was originally planned to be it was supposed to be just a trip around Europe and an excuse for me to kind of see some family out there and stuff. I ended up seeing 3 weddings because that whole thing doesn't stop with East Indian weddings. There's one pretty much every week, and I was out there, and the whole tradition is that if you attend a wedding, then you end up if you attend a wedding, then that person whose wedding you attended, that person has to attend any person in your family getting married, like your immediate family.
Yeah, that's how it
So
works.
a lot of people attended my brother's weddings, my 2 brothers. So I had to go and represent my family in these weddings. To be honest though, it was the amount of hospitality that was shown by people while we were there made them actually really like bearable and actually somewhat fun. I'd say 2 out of 3 were wicked, right? One of them was a little bit tedious, but yeah, the Europe trip started in we had a connecting flight through Holland, and then we landed in Norway, stayed there for a week, went to Cyprus, and then UK. Cyprus we were there for a week too. Then we went to the UK and stayed there for the remainder. And I spent the last couple of days in Holland and Norway.
Didn't you actually bump into the Jersey Shorecast down there at one point?
Yeah, they were at what's it called?
Ice?
This club Ice. So that was kind of weird. We also ran into Tim Westwood, who's a wicked DJ. He has a lot of freestyle. Like videos on YouTube. He hosts a lot of like famous rappers that come on and freestyle. Like Eminem, obviously he won like pretty much at any person that's in the rap scene right now.
Yeah.
They don't really screw around with Eminem. They say he's like it's the one guy that you can't touch on the freestyle like grounds, right? Like he's just wicked. He's been like that. That's how he built his career. So like that guy Eminem destroyed it in that thing. That's a bit of a tangent, but definitely worth checking out. If you go to Tim Westwood Freestyles, something like that, Tim Westwood TV, I think is the name of the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But so it features some pretty well-known rappers and some underground guys.
Yeah.
But
the way we're talking about him, you think we're paid to plug him?
No, but it was kind of cool. He's wicked. He was actually. Did you hear he was supposed to star in that new movie Elysium?
No, you talking about Eminem? Or?
Yeah. So what happened was Elysium is Matt Damon's the star in it.
Yeah.
Right. But the original plan was that they pitched it, and the director actually wanted Eminem to do the role. He had Eminem as his first go-to guy on the list. I think Matt Damon was like number 3 actually.
Really?
But Eminem was offered the role, and because they wouldn't do it, and I think Philly, that's where he's from. I think he's from Philly, right? I might be wrong. But he ended up saying that because they wouldn't film it in his hometown, he's like, I'm not gonna do the movie. He gave it up, and I think that they filmed Elysium actually in Vancouver. So Eminem didn't want to come to Vancouver, but I don't take it that way. I guess he just has a lot of hometown love.
Yeah. But anyways, back to Europe.
Yeah. So sorry, we were saying.
Yeah.
Eminem's just like every time I talk about this guy, I get on and rant. So
it's okay.
Yeah, we were in so we saw Tim Westwood, and honestly, Cyprus. Basically, what happened was my friend Marios, right? He's he went to school with me in India, and he was in a nearby college, and he was actually in a dietitian program. We kind of got along because he was also a bit of a not hypochondriac. He's insomniac, right? He has trouble sleeping also. So we'd be up at late hours, just kind of chilling, talking about stuff that's going on around the world. And he insisted. He was like, dude, if you ever go to Europe, you have to make a stop through Cyprus. It's beautiful. It's amazing, like just scenery out there, crazy amount of people there.
Yeah. Fun fact, by the way. Apparently, according to legend, you said that Aphrodite was born or came down.
In
Cyprus?
Born in Cyprus.
Born
apparently.
in Cyprus.
So I guess that accounts for some of the beautiful women out there, right? And honestly, like there's really beautiful women in like that area of Europe, Greece. And like Greece is actually nearby, but Cyprus also, like, it's just people that a lot of people ride around on bikes. That's something that you notice. Actually, Amsterdam was like the capital of bikes. people have trouble getting parking for cars
Yeah.
because bikes park everywhere. And there's like a lane, a little red lane on the ground, and if you're just walking along the road, like sometimes you'll see that like just to get around a car, you go in the red lane for a second, and you'll miss a bike by like inches. Like just they rip past you, right? But it's wicked because they just have such a awesome infrastructure in the sense that people do like to actually commute on bikes, or you can take like the waterways, you can take boats and stuff. So that was really cool, being able to check that out. But then we went to Cyprus and we kind of checked out some of the areas there. There's one thing, can you look it up? It's Famagusta. Remember I was telling you about the city?
Yeah, you did. You did.
Yeah, so basically when we were in Cyprus, there was a bunch of boat ships that actually go out to Famagusta, right? And this place was like the commercial hub of the world. Well, Europe and arguably the world at the time during the 70s. Apparently, like people were saying that a lot of people were, bringing business to this area, and it was crazy. But what happened was during when Turkey actually occupied Cyprus, they took half of it, or not half of it, but one third of it, one third of the northern portion, I think. But Famagusta, I think, was like an area for like there's a little bit of civil unrest or something, and basically what it resulted in was that area was considered like a conflict zone, so it wasn't given to either country.
Yeah.
So now you have like guards that stand outside the boundaries of the city, but you have this massive city that when you look at a picture of it, you think like, wow, that'd be kind of cool to check out. It's like skyscrapers.
Oh, I got it right here.
You got it right there.
Here we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. So it's like do you have like a nice picture that shows like the coast and everything?
Well, this is showing the beach here. You can see the deserted condo buildings, the apartments by the beach, all completely deserted.
Yeah. Find a picture. This one right here, coast. Yeah. So that picture kind of shows
pretty tiny. Yeah.
That picture kind of something similar to that one.
If you get an idea, actually, the way it looks now, it's a bit like Inception. You guys remember the beginning where they actually go down to limbo? And there's a bunch of crumbling buildings. Then you got a picture of Famagusta.
Yeah, it's crazy, and like you can go into these buildings and they're completely deserted, and like they had like elevator systems in there before, and they're smashed apart. And my friend was telling me all this stuff, but now like it's completely deserted. It's a ghost town, and that's why people actually like the attraction is to it. Is that people go there to check out this ghost town. But that was kind of sad to see, because I kind of was told the story about how a lot of Cyprus people were actually like forced out of that area and had to go to like the nearby cities and stuff. But we also checked out the city of Ayanapa while we were there. And my friends actually, Marius is from Nicosia or Nicosia, I'm not sure how it's pronounced exactly, but yeah, we checked out Nicosia, Larnaca, Lamos, and Ayanapa. And Ayanapa is like basically it's Europe's Las Vegas, I'd say. So, and everybody understands it that way, that like people when they finish high school or college, they all flock to Ayanapa. And it's like while we were there, our friend was telling us that he's like, no other city, it's always made like the top 10 party cities around the world.
Yeah.
And he's like, no other city can really compare, because he's like, this is how it is. All the clubs, the after hour clubs, they close at around 8:30, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and then beach parties start. And the beach parties run through the whole day, and they flow into like the clubs and the pubs, whatever, opening up, and then people start like nightlife. So literally you can party for 24 hours in a day. And it was crazy. But our hotel was nearby that area, and we got to check out some of the food there. Honestly, man, like one of the biggest things about going to Europe, I suggest anybody that ever gets the experience, try to experience as much food as you can. For me, like I checked out a lot of cheesecakes, because I'm like a big fan of, I don't know, I don't eat a lot of cheesecake, but I like to have like a good piece of cheesecake every once in a while. So I tried a lot of different ones out. Blackcurrant in Cyprus is wicked. If you can ever find somebody out there that has blackcurrant cheesecake, try it out. And I don't know, I just did a lot of like tried out some of the local foods, tried out the local cheese there. It's actually called halloumi or something. Wicked cheese. I got hooked on in India because Mario showed it to me. But the cheeses, that's number 2. Cheese and cheesecake, just cheese in general, wicked in Europe. And I don't know, we had we had the chance. Like, we're actually vegetarians, me and Sunny, so we thought we wouldn't be able to have much in the options of food. But while we were there, we had Mexican, Italian, Chinese, all these crazy restaurants. They always had a vegetarian option. So that was kind of cool because a lot of people are moving in that direction now.
Yeah.
But even somewhere that's like kind of commercialized like that, you still have vegetarian options. So that's kind of cool.
Well, that's great, and we're glad you're back in one piece.
Yeah.
But I think it's time to actually get to the good news.
Yeah,
now,
no, for sure.
This is a good transition point, actually. Still speaking of Europe, we made a bit of a mistake talking about Edward Snowden. If you guys are familiar with him, he's the whistleblower now on the NSA, and he's been pursued to Russia. Now, we made the mistake of saying that he actually was granted asylum and made it safely to Venezuela. That's not true, actually. He was actually given 1-year refugee status in Russia. Apparently, after some talks where there was actually a little bit of animosity between Russia and the United States. We just wanted to clarify that. And with that, I think we can now move into talking about whistleblowers. And I think this is a big hot topic of the day. And I think it's something that warrants a lot of attention because as much as people know, and I meet a lot of people that really are not on the other side of this, everybody sort of understands it, but I just feel compelled to talk about it because every bit of news that's usually talked about whistleblowers is usually more about their personal traits. It's something beside the fact that governments are keeping secrets. They're spying on people. They're behaving in ways that people never would have allowed them to, if they were actually given the option. The whole idea of voting for your representatives is that you are giving them your power. Hopefully, ideally,
they're supposed to represent.
They're supposed to represent you. Yeah. Ideally, they're using your power for what you would like done. Now, you can see that through the leaking of these documents, they've completely subverted it. They've diverted funds into military, into seeing a corporate merger with the government. There's so much that you can see happening that people simply don't want. It's very clear. And as much as I know, nobody really is on the other side of this. It's good to clarify that the important thing is not that Bradley Manning wants to become Chelsea Manning now. That's his personal business. It's not that Mike Hastings, if you guys are familiar with him, if you're not, please look him up. It's not that they found marijuana and methamphetamines in his bloodstream. Actually, even the coroner points out that in the LA Times, there is such a small amount that it would not have contributed to the crash at all. Again, his personal business. What's more important is the story, what they're bringing to the table. Sadler, is there anything you want to add on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. When the United States found out that Snowden was in Russia, he was there for a few weeks in the transit part of the airport, right?
Yeah.
And they found out, and like at that time, obviously you want to be kind of stepping on eggshells or whatever the term is. I don't even know what the phrase is. But you don't want to be taking stupid steps in what you say with regards to relations at all. They at that crucial point, Obama's government, they accused Russia of encouraging political dissent, right? So essentially encouraging discouraging. That's what I meant to say. Discouraging political dissent, right? So they actually were saying that Russia, with some other dealings, were not allowing for their citizens to like stand up for their rights, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And during that time period, like when Snowden is sitting in the transit, Putin's government was like, okay, look, you guys can be so arrogant as to like accuse us of political dissent, when probably one of the most ridiculous cases of it.
Political dissent.
Yeah, sorry, discouraging us of political dissent, when probably one of the most like just blatant cases of it is right on our doorstep, right?
Yeah.
And so it was insane, like just the fact that the American government could be so blunt at that moment in time. Like you'd think that that's when they should be doing some ass kissing, right? Like if anything.
Yeah.
But
no, it really is the most telling case of hypocrisy. It's I think the like crystalline form of that term.
Yeah.
Just taking place. And
then McCain actually made a statement too. I never get enough of that guy, man. Getting shot in the face. He got shot. Was it McCain?
No. McCain shot somebody.
Okay, McCain shot somebody else in the face or something. I can't even remember.
Yeah.
But McCain is just a hotbed for stupidity. He basically said that, yeah, after this moment, I can't remember the exact quote. He's like, maybe the American government has to actually reconsider our relations with Putin's Russia. So I don't know. It's just craziness. The fact that considering the present situation and just exactly what Snowden released, it's hard to see the Americans still being so like chill about it. You know,
I think there's quite a lot of factors going on. We know what's happening in Syria now. You know, you get the impression looking at the facts that Russia has essentially drawn a line in the sand here, saying that America is not to invade militarily after what appears to have been a chemical weapon attack. Now, if we go into detail about that, if anybody heard any passing stories about a chemical bomb going off in Syria, what they actually said was if it was a chemical weapon, they wouldn't have smelled it. Now, because they could smell this and it was pretty pungent, they're suggesting that it was pesticide, and it was kind of a rudimentary device because the Syrian rebels, actually both sides admitted that they don't actually have the technological capabilities to launch a nuclear weapon, a dirty bomb, essentially. So that being said, with the tensions going on in Syria and this business with Snowden now, U.S. and Russia are sort of course, they're looking like they're butting heads. I don't know exactly what they're trying to accomplish here. I think it's more or less the public psyche of both countries really just coming out and recognizing the U.S. exceptionalism for what it is, and saying no more to this. Like, with so much surveillance now that's been going on, nobody can really keep their head in the ground willingly.
See, that was one thing, man, that scared the crap out of me when I was in Europe. When I was in England, and not so much Scotland, but especially in England, and we went around England, went to Birmingham, went to Newcastle, I think, went for a bit. We stopped there for a bit. We went to London proper, and basically we were there, and I would see cameras everywhere. Like, you don't understand the exaggeration that people make in TV shows is not even like close to how much it actually is.
Yeah.
There's it's hard to find like a dark spot. Right, a dark spot is a place where there isn't any footage, or there isn't. It's not in the cameras.
Yeah, and
view, right?
We might have mentioned this earlier, but I did read a report stating that now, in addition to having cameras everywhere, they've equipped some of them with microphones that can address people in a public area, and the voice that they actually chose. Yeah, speakers to direct at whoever's standing around doing something, whatever suspicious, or just doing anything really. They can direct a voice at them, and the voice is actually they selected a child's voice. Now they did that because that's the least obtrusive.
That's interesting. Where was this?
This report was, I believe, it was on Straight Goods.
Where did this happen?
This is in London.
Okay, because I haven't seen that. I saw some weird. I didn't see that. I didn't see anything like that, like voices of kids or anything.
I don't think they use it just every day.
Okay, that's interesting. But what they did have was they had really racist campaigns targeted at immigrants.
That's right, immigrants, yeah.
Yeah, it said, go home or face arrest, right? And I was just like...
Yeah. Have you seen Children of Men?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Where they round them up?
Yeah.
Okay, that...
Well, I mean, that's a theme in a lot of movies, right? But Children of Men is kind of a future setting.
And actually, quite a few movies have touched on that vein. I mean, one, you got Children of Men, then you've got V for Vendetta, which addresses the same thing. I mean, there's quite a few movies that address how solidified Britain becomes in itself.
It's Orwellian, right?
Oh, absolutely, that guy called it. Praise to Orwell.
I remember when I read 1984 originally, it was at some point in high school.
Yeah.
I've read it 3 times now, because first time I didn't really, I wasn't thinking as much into it as I should have been.
Yeah.
And the second time, I just... I read it. It was actually a proper read, and then I just went back a couple months ago and I read it again. But it was something that I found hard to grasp at a young age. I was like, what the heck is this? How can he have such a strange, strange predictions as to what's gonna happen in the future? So I didn't really want to believe most of it too. But now that you see that the way that the governments are going, it's privacy is becoming just so thrown to the side now that, like you mentioned with that Xbox, right? The fact that you can essentially like map a whole entire room with like the cameras that are
Yeah.
made in Connect, I think it
Extrapolate
is.
that. You can map a city, anybody with one of
Yeah,
those.
like it's
Now it's
it's
true
like
though,
that
but
shit that happened in
they
Batman.
cut that.
What Batman movie was that? Where he
Oh,
has a
that they
cell phone?
introduced that in the Dark Knight, yeah, where they actually every cell phone becomes a sort of like
Yeah,
a
because
sonar mapping
in that
device.
there's sonar, right?
Yeah,
But now, like, imagine that there's a computer that just puts together addresses and multiple cameras.
Mm.
So now you can have like a digital grid of the country. Like, do you think there isn't technology out there that does that? That just pieces them together? Like, obviously, each camera there's not it has an idea of which location it's at. Like,
yeah,
it'll say like the corner of this, blah blah. You put those together. There's that TV show Point of Interest, right?
yeah,
And I think I told you about that.
yeah. You mentioned this.
Yeah, so there's a software in there that basically just like analyzes your stress in your eyes, the way that you're talking, the tone that you're talking with, and it predicts if you're gonna do crime in the future.
Yeah,
If you're a person that should be like subject to some type of surveillance, which is really like not really defined what exactly surveillance is
no,
nowadays,
and
right?
that's
Especially with the
what most
NSA
of
stuff.
this. Yeah, this is what most of the technology is based on, and we should say that this is not concrete. This technology is flawed. It's not in any way completely in place. I think we kind of get the impression that this is locked in already and we're already like rats in a cage.
Yeah.
That's not true because there's so much, and we can go on to that later. But there's actually a student from the U.S. actually who developed a system. It's actually a form of text that can't be picked up by any NSA or any other intelligence scanners or analyzing devices that they might use, and it's really ingenious looking. You can read it just staring at it, but it's made up in such a way that it wouldn't be picked up. Really interesting. At the same time, there's a bunch of actually in Athens in Greece, there's over 1,000 people just in Athens alone that have developed their own internet system using just a little bit of hardware that's very inexpensive. They've developed their own grid, and they've actually got their own internet system now with a rudimentary form of Craigslist. They actually do movie nights where one person might stream a video and thousands of people could see it. It's got everything you might need, all the information resources, but it's not being tracked by government. It's much cheaper and it's faster than regular internet. And this is not just in Athens. It's not an isolated case. It's actually going on in quite a few cities around the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's important to highlight what is actually happening. After all, we are the good news podcast,
Yeah.
right?
No, definitely. Like some of the steps that we're taking in technology are just getting insane now, right? Like
Yeah.
I was laughing at the idea of Siri. What's it called? What's that thing on the iPhone? Just because my iPhone's got
Siri?
busted. Siri, right? Yeah. So my iPhone got busted, so I keep forgetting now. But Siri was like a laughable concept for me originally, right? I was thinking, I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, you talk to this thing and it's supposed to answer your questions. People use it like the new Google, right? So now you have something you can interact with, and it'll understand pretty well like anything that you say. Like who is the owner of this restaurant, blah blah blah, and it'll find it. Like it's crazy. Like it's kind of scary when you actually ask it some of the most random questions because it'll find data for you. But at the same time, like that type of communication that we've opened up with electronics and our ability to access them seamlessly, that's really something that's growing to be like almost supernatural, like something that you'd see in a movie now, right?
But we have to look at the same time, I think just in having this technology at the disposal of the public mind, which essentially moves where it will, and that is apparently closer to connectivity, it's faster access to information. This is a funny thing, by the way. It's so funny. The hardest thing we might explain to somebody from the 1950s that's transported here. Just imagine that scenario, for instance. Yeah. Somebody from the 1950s is transported here. Somebody came forward and said that the most difficult thing to explain to somebody like that, not all of the advancements we've made, the fact that there's actually a black guy in the White House, nothing like that. It would be explaining that we have, all of us, devices in our pockets that have access to the depths of human information which we have accumulated for hundreds of years, essentially. and we use it to search up pictures of cats. That's the hardest
It's
thing.
true
But,
though. Cute kitties and stuff is one of the biggest YouTube searches to
Yeah.
date, right? So,
yeah, but at the same time, going back a little, just the public mind moving where it will, the desire to be more connected. Yeah, that's great, and it'll continue to do so. And you have obviously, private groups, private interests that want to subvert that a little. They'll provide the platform and the technology for us to move in a way that the public wants, but they might tweak it in a way like the Xbox was, and gear it with a little bit of surveillance technology, and that was the trade-off. But people became wise to that, and they said no. And so I think we've demonstrated in quite a lot of cases that just the sheer magnitude of the public's desire, the population as a whole's desire to learn and get closer and to cooperate, that's continuing to find new platforms, be it technologically or, with grassroots groups, whatever it takes. It's happening. And while there might be other organizations that seek to supply us with the means to do so, with a little tweak here and there to help their interests, the more we know about it, and of course we have individuals like Bradley Manning, Mike Hastings, Edward Snowden. These guys
Mike
aren't the last guys. Yeah, he's somebody we're going to talk about next.
Yeah.
But we can see that they can't operate in the dark anymore. Or at least that time is kind of ending, which is really, really good. So I think it's really important, and it does take some effort. We should try to move away from any sort of pessimism. That's not saying don't be realistic, but if you want to look at it, being realistic means that things might be taking a turn for the better. And that's not something we generally hear when we look at the whole world, like the scope of things. Yeah, there's still a lot of unrest. Israel and Palestine, that's not going very well. But
people
we're
always
making
like,
important strides.
I don't know. It's interesting. Like, I always talk to people, and I tell them that I have like this idea that we're moving towards a positive direction in society, right? But people, their first response will always be that, I always tell them, I'm like, people always say that times are getting so dark right now that it can only change towards better now, right?
Yeah. What
And
is it
it's
they
so
say?
dark.
What is it they say? It's always darkest before the dawn. I'm not
Dusk is
borrowing a
always
line
darkest
from
before
Batman.
dawn. Yeah. So
Not borrowing that
the
line.
dusk is always darkest before dawn, right? But or reverse, I don't even know. Anyways, but so that whole thing being said, they I always say that it's gonna get better now. And people always saying that it's always been this bad. It's been bad for a long time. People have been kind of chaotic, and there's been just chaos and violence all over. But the thing is that I have an argument for that. There's a difference now between now and back then. You look at the population of the world now, right? We're at 7 billion, 7.1 billion or something like that. And this population went up in like exponentially because of, our access to different technologies, increasing our standard of living, our access to, medicine and all of its benefits. That changed people's lives drastically, so people are living longer, and more people are giving birth successfully.
Yeah,
right?
And we can see that crime is actually dropping.
Violent crime
and people
have said
is dropping.
that this is actually the most peaceful times that we're in right now. Right? But like, you look at the amount of diversion of actual attention. You look at the amount of like corruption on the highest levels of government and everything. It's pretty bad.
And it can be said that that's always been the case.
Yeah, so that's what I always say though, that that there's 7 billion people now as opposed to how many people there were back then.
Yeah.
So if we could measure positivity and negativity on a scale, like a literal, weight kind of scale, I think that based on the fact that there are so many more people now, there is like, not to make it a numerical figure or give it any definition like that, but I think that there is more negativity being spread now because more people are affected by these people that put out these different forms of propaganda or diversion or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing though, is that a lot of people make that statement all the time that it's always been bad, but it hasn't always been this bad. There hasn't been this many people who have been told the total opposite of what is actually going on, and have been like, just what are we when it comes down to it? We're just being treated like slaves, like we're told to go to work from 8 to 4 or, whatever time, 9 to 5, and come back home and just like sit in front of our TV, listen to whatever the hell is on the tube for a while, and just eat some food and pass out. Like that's what they tell us.
Start it all up over again.
Yeah, and it's the same thing every single morning. So like that kind of idea is, it's we have a race of humans that are not being made to go towards their potential. Because honestly, like we've seen it, so many people that have tried to go against the status quo and like try to invent things. We've talked about so many different inventors in the past that have been like the guy who invented the water-powered car and all these other people. If any person steps out of line and tries to make like a difference in society, either they're stifled or they're just like completely attacked physically or their image, right?
And that would be this is a good transition point actually to talk about Mike Hastings. Now I'm not sure how much you guys know about this case, but essentially what happened was Mike Hastings, a reporter who used to do wartime journalism, he actually had quite a few successful stories. I think he even had a general in Iraq ousted. I'll have to check on that. But through his work, he actually came up against quite a few, scary characters. And when I say that, I mean his most recent story actually pertained to the current CIA director, John Brennan. Now, as many of you might know, he actually died before he released this story he was working on. And this was clearly a car accident, and what's interesting though is that the story has been stonewalled. The evidence has been detained by the LAPD. The black box, which was in the Mercedes he was driving, it was a 2013 vehicle, and so all of the electrical signals and the commands that were taken just prior to the accident were contained in the black box. That's in police custody still, and there were actually reports, witnesses on the scene, saying that his car exploded before it hit the tree.
Yeah.
The idea being that before his death, when he was seen speeding down a Los Angeles back road into the tree, he was doing something like 90 miles per hour on a road.
Yeah.
And I leave it to you guys to piece that together. Somebody working on controversial stories pertaining to the CIA director is suddenly seen careening down an LA side street doing 90 before crashing into a tree, and his car supposedly exploding before it hit the tree. There's even suggestion that it was remote controlled to do so, being a 2013 vehicle. There's a lot of speculation.
There's a lot of speculation with that, right?
Yeah.
So to speak on those speculations, kind of like, yeah, I mean, there's people saying that there was possibly remote control, that it was like, if you look at the some of the video that they released, that it doesn't look like he has any control over the car. There's sudden movements.
Yeah.
That that kind of lead to suspicion.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
What I'm basing it on, because clearly I can't get the facts from the LAPD. What I'm basing it on is that he's not unknown by, obviously, the military, because he worked to have a high-ranking individual cast out, for lack of a better term. He was actually writing a story about CIA directors, and suddenly he dies. There's actual reports that he saw the FBI tampering with his vehicle.
Yeah.
He was worried about getting in his car.
Yeah, he made like a lot of statements, public statements before he passed, saying that like I might be targeted and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens. Unfortunately, if you live in the States, that's like a real thing to worry about. So many rappers and public figures, they'll start saying these things. Eminem used to say it all the time when he first came out against Bush and stuff. He's like, look, if I keep talking like this, like something's gonna happen to me, so just I'm calling it right now, right?
Yeah.
And some of the people are right, some of them are wrong. Even like Michael Jackson was saying stuff like, he made a song, They Don't Really Care About Us.
Yeah.
And then he was saying that, something that he started getting a little bit overboard, but we all know Michael Jackson has that reputation anyways.
Yeah, you were saying though that he wouldn't eat anything that he hadn't personally prepared with his own two hands.
Yeah, and like he wouldn't, like for that time period really close to where he passed away.
Yeah.
He was doing that tour for a comeback tour.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was supposed to be a lot of countries and stuff.
We mentioned the V for Vendetta movie seeming to be, actually closely related or loosely based on what appears to actually be happening in London now. I'm not saying that there's a shadow group there, but how the image of Anonymous, is taken from the V for Vendetta movie. And I don't know if anybody knows this actually, but Anonymous actually issued a statement calling for citizen action on November the 5th, saying that it's time to march on I guess, the political institutions, and to.
So is it I remember hearing about this, but is this globally or is it like
I think this actually just pertains to the U.S. and I think there's a small faction in North America, Canada too, saying that it's time to hold our elected officials accountable in independent trials.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because Bush and Obama, I think, they've already they're being tried for war crimes and stuff.
Yeah, but it's very difficult to get that to stick.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Yeah, when I think everybody remembers when Bush actually came out to Vancouver, and I think Cheney came out as well at one point, and yeah, there were crowds out there waiting for them, trying to hold them accountable as war criminals.
Yeah.
And I don't really see any problem with that because it's true. What they did was criminal.
There's this one rally. I think Joe Rogan mentioned it too, and I saw it when I was watching a bunch of documentaries about this stuff.
Yeah.
But basically, they had this massive rally for in honor of George Bush for something, and they had these bunch of hippies protesters. They jumped out in front, and I guess they were willing to get arrested, but they started screaming like, "You're a war criminal! You're a war!" Like they're screaming at this guy. So it's like they're at a distance where he can clearly hear them, right? And he was being interrupted by them while he's talking, and then like just a bunch of police officers come grab them, and Secret Service shows up and they're like, "What's your names and stuff? We want to keep you on file and everything."
Yeah.
So it was interesting. You can find that on YouTube if you search like George Bush war criminal screams or something. But that was interesting just because. You see people that don't give a shit anymore. They're at that point where they're an animal backed into a corner, and they just they want to fight for their rights in a more realistic way than you'd ever seen before, because they see now, because of all these whistleblowers and everything, that this is a very, faux democratic government that we have in place. It's not real. It's been operating in this way for a long time.
In fact, it's really actually ingenious the way it kind of came about, because actually, if it were any other system, we would not have this form of government. If it was an overtly fascist state, people would have had a revolution long ago. It's only through something like democracy where people feel that they're already free. In fact, there's a wonderful quote that I had that says, "If you wish to enslave a man, first allow him to believe that he's already free." And now that's, I think, what democracy has going for it, because people believe that they're free and that they have the right and that they have the privilege to give their power to other individuals to act as their representatives. Only with that system could we come to where we are today. Now that's just one of the points I find interesting about it all.
Yeah.
But actually, by the same token, we can step out of it, because without that democratic idea, without the rhetoric, without all of the documents that go with that, and with the human spirit that comes with that, we wouldn't have the innate sense of freedom that will essentially, I think, propel people beyond the control, the police state, which I think has now moved from obscurity, from being, referred to as, just a conspiracy theory. By the way, I read a study recently. I'll try to find out, and I'll link it in at the end. Where that's from, but actually a study shows that people who actually follow conspiracy theories are saner than people that believe the official story of world events. So that's something
interesting.
But yeah, stepping back and just looking at it, I think it's true. It's become a police state.
Yeah.
And it was really subtle the way it came in. But yeah, I think we have The beautiful part about it, though, is that every bit of infrastructure that's gone into surveillance, into policing, into whatever you might have in order to control people, can then be used against, those using it. Because essentially, if you have like software used for surveilling groups, catching emails, we have groups like Anonymous and other hacker groups that can take that software and use it to see what private industry, what military, what government is saying amongst themselves. And that's why we're seeing so many stories break. And I think it's important to point out, though, that it's not just the mainstream media covering them, because if you want damage control done, when a story breaks, you have to show it, and then you frame it. So stories break. Inevitably, a story will break, say, painting up a public figure like this Rob Ford business as an example. The story broke, came out, and immediately I think the media had to step in and show it. Now,
see that Rob Ford thing is so interesting because ever since it happened, there's an analysis of that picture, right? Ever since it happened, one of the guys is dead, right? Two of the guys in the picture, I think, have been like raided in their houses and stuff, and like, the picture in the back of the house, that place got raided and like policed up and everything. So that picture, they say it becomes more incriminating as time passes.
Yeah.
And like that was another. I mean, it's an example of the fact that you have corruption everywhere.
Yeah, and you see this. Well, not everywhere, but you see this too with the Bradley Manning thing. Now,
no, I mean in every country you have some form of corruption.
In every country,
you do have corruption like everywhere though. Like that's kind of corruption is what.
I think we have to be careful when we say everywhere though.
Yeah.
Everywhere gives it the idea that like, oh shit, the teacher's corrupt. Like, oh shit.
But the whole system is corrupt though, right? Even teachers, we look at that.
Yeah.
We look at what teachers are supposed to do.
Yeah, system I can agree with.
But like we look at, for example, like what teachers are supposed to do. They have this massive role in their lives in which you are going to be influencing the way that kid's brainwaves go. Like you can completely change the direction of somebody's life just in 1 year, right? And I've seen that firsthand, that certain teachers of mine have helped me so greatly that like I've gone back and thanked them and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But that system has been broken, the teaching system has been broken so that kids are not encouraged to think outside of the box anymore. It's more like, you adhere to the system that we have for you, and this is the real learning, and anything else is not considered that.
Yeah.
So that's why there's programs now that are coming out that you can actually study, and your degrees can be recognized from this online program from like other schools. I think you were telling me about this, right? Was it you that was telling me about this, or?
Actually, I don't think so.
Okay, so basically there's a program, there's a website and like a network of people that they have started online education from like any country, and then many major schools around the world are starting to recognize that specific education.
Yeah.
So first of all, it's free, right? And people are getting into it from all over the world. So you can actually get it, and then you can transition into like a major school.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. You have an education system that's coming out, kind of a rogue education system.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing, is that like we do have corruption on so many different levels of our society now.
Yeah.
You look at like the way that the bank works. A bank is an institution that everybody relies on. It doesn't work in like in a conscious or in a proper way. You look at the way that our policing forces work. Right?
Yeah, that's changed, but all of that I think is due to. I mean, this is a word that gets tossed around a lot, but privatization. But we look at banks. Initially, under their ideal format, that was one way that we would actually control, a rudimentary economy, and it was effective insofar as we stayed that way. It was trade, and then the actual currency was based on or backed by gold or some other precious metal. Today we use fractional reserve notes, fractional reserve banking,
which is based on bonds instead.
Yeah, well, like it's based on nothing, so it's fiat currency. We all know money now is debt, and debt is money, but there's also interest, so you'll never have it all paid off. Hence, the financial system will collapse.
Yeah.
I'd like to hammer that point home. It will collapse. In fact, it's really actually scary when you look at it. If you're actually really heavily invested into the banking system and you have total faith in it, this idea that Ben Bernanke, he's the face of the Federal Reserve now, and I don't believe he has absolute control. He has like an aesthetic form of control. But every time he even hints at the idea that the Federal Reserve in America is going to pull the stimulus out and allow interest rates, which are at zero now, to rise again, that'll collapse it, essentially. People will not be able to sustain themselves if interest rates go up. They won't be able to pay their way. And if that system goes, then the European system goes, and every other system goes, because they're all closely linked. Now, that's funny because every time Bernanke says, I'm thinking of removing the stimulus, the market gets incredibly shaky. So, effectively, one man saying,
that's one thing that
I don't want to.
I know the confidence-based thing is something that pisses me off so much, and it never has made sense to me that you can literally just like because of something somebody said or a loss in confidence, you can have a shift in this economic system, like the stock market and everything. It's just so bullshit. Like you have like it's like a house of cards with no cards in the middle, right? You're gonna collapse at some point. You have these little points where you have stock market collapses and this and that. You were saying that the Nasdaq like shut down a couple of days ago and stuff,
actually,
right?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
No. Yeah, yesterday.
So that's the thing is that we like it's hard to figure out how you can work outside of the system. Some people choose. There's actually a bunch of there's a bunch of people that are actually advocates for political change and stuff and funding a lot of charitable organizations, but they're like these students and stuff, and they say that the way that we're doing this is by going to school, getting smart, working in the business industry, and then using that money actually responsibly. So they're like they're like working stiffs that are a part of the system, but they're manipulating the system for good, right?
And you can't do that.
And that's kind of what Anonymous is doing on the internet, right? So our system, the way that it is corrupt, but we can manipulate it into a better, more positive direction.
As an analogy, and I like this very much, I've heard this referred to in a different respect, but the tools we have, the infrastructure, it is essentially a knife. Now, a knife can be used to cut somebody, or it can be used to help them, to say lance a boil or something. It's a tool. A hammer can be used to hurt somebody or help them. That's essentially what it is. And that applies, I think, to every bit of infrastructure we have.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, like now that you see people are starting to get frustrated with the way that our lives are being set up and the debt that they were always accumulating, the constant system of not enough income, lower, the lowest, the salaries never high enough and stuff. These problems are causing people to look to like, you're starting to see people. They're trying to look for like something to kind of guide their direction guide their minds in like a better path. You're starting to see that's why you're seeing so many people are either going to psychiatrists or parents are pushing drugs onto their kids, or drugs are actually being pushed into adults too. Like right now in the States, we often use the States for statistics because Canada's population is like 36 million. That's less than like California state. 37 million, that's less than California state, right? And the United States, that's why you're pulling from a larger population, so the statistics, like for certain things you have to consider them, right? And right now in the States, more people are addicted to pharmaceutical drugs than are addicted to Oxycontin, heroin. Sorry, Oxycontin is a pharmaceutical drug. Then are addicted to heroin, cocaine, and ecstasy. Those are the three that are listed. So it's like over 100,000 deaths a year from pharmaceutical related deaths. People are like there is a major depression that's coming forth because of this recession that people are in now. So and as a result though, what I'm seeing is that the people that are getting away from these pharmaceutical drugs and have realized that that's not the solution, they're going towards meditation a lot more often now, right?
Well, that's what. It's another nice feature about all this is that this, when we look at it and we think, oh, it's getting worse, it's all terrible, it's all coming down around our ears. It's actually the fertile ground for a better future. If we were comfortable, things wouldn't change. And as much as we don't like it, our beds need to become hard to sleep in order for us to change things. And we can see that actually, with people stepping out and actually saying, instead of distracting myself, instead of getting lost in media and using pharmaceutical drugs, what have you, I need to actually find out the root of the problem. And you know what? I think that's actually having a real noticeable effect now, because the drug war has been recognized by so many prominent individuals that actually can affect things in the US and in Canada, that this drug war has failed miserably too, because you have a system that's imprisoning people, just imprisoning people for a first-time drug offense with no prior violent history, nothing else.
Yeah.
They've imprisoned them at the taxpayer's expense. They have the largest prison population in the world. And drugs that could be used to benefit people are being shown as extremely destructive. In fact, they are much less harmful than alcohol, much less harmful than cigarette smokes. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
We just kind of, repetition.
And it's crazy actually that like Portugal, they actually decriminalized like all drugs. So they decriminalize them, not legalize them, right?
Yeah.
So that you can't be like can't be arrested, can't do time for drugs like this. And everybody around the world has been talking about the success from this decision, because they're treating addiction rather as a psychological ailment than a problem, or like or as like a criminal offense kind of thing. Right? So even like using drugs and having drugs, they're considering that like something of a problem. Why are you doing this? They address it, right?
Yeah, and that takes me back. Sorry, just to backstep, but that takes me back to what they're doing in the U.S. Not only are they eliminating this, sending people to jail for a first-time drug offense, if they're even detaining them at all, they're putting them into a system that helps them do just that, recognize why they're using drugs, helping them to remain productive members of society. I know that term gets touted a lot, but I think we can agree that that's a lot better than being a prisoner at the taxpayer's expense. These systems are going in now that are working to curb the actual desire for drugs.
Yeah.
That's handling depression, whatever we need. Of course, it's not easy. I don't blame anybody for trying to self-medicate like that. There's healthy ways to do it, but I won't judge people who actually, go that method anyways. But the point is, it should not be recognized as a criminal act.
Yeah.
It's just common sense. And if you actually go back, look at the reason that the drug war was enacted in the first place. Who did it benefit? I think that a lot of research points to the fact that it essentially decimated the black population in the U.S. So
yeah, I mean, like, crack was made to target the Black Panthers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more than that, I think it's just to sedate a public. To sedate a population that feels that there must be an enemy. We know that the military, and again we come back to the U.S., but the military, particularly the CIA, funded a lot of its action using drug money. And
a lot of people see this whole thing now with how Washington and Colorado State have legalized recreational use of marijuana. They think about it as being such like a beacon to the fact that all these drug laws are going to be changed, and it's going to change the whole system, how it's kind of being enforced, and people are going to change the way that they perceive these drugs that are being put in categories of type 1, type 2, all these drugs. They're saying that that this is going to be the change in the tide. My look on this is that I've been seeing the fact that a lot of states are waiting right now to before they actually make the decision to follow suit with Colorado and Washington. What I think they're waiting for is that they want to get the numbers back, right? And they just want to have numbers that tell them how much tax money you're getting out of this. Because the numbers are going to be ridiculous. They're going to be like, a lot of people smoke marijuana. A lot of people want to have the right to smoke marijuana in the same way that people smoke cigarettes. Yeah. And that's actually who's going to be regulating it in Washington. Yeah. Is like you're hearing that marijuana is going to be on store shelves and be regulated by the tobacco industry.
Yeah.
What does that show you? The U.S. already has lobbyists for tobacco industry in the Congress, right? So you look at that, and you see the fact that that's probably going to happen in the future for marijuana, right? Because marijuana is going to become a massive cash crop, which it already is for them, It already is like a stimulus to their economy, but now they're going to be able to use it as actual taxable money, right?
Yeah.
So that's like I don't see it as being that necessarily such a good thing for people out there that are just really into smoking marijuana. I think that what you're going to see is that they're going to start taxing it. They're going to start charging government rates on it.
Yeah.
And British Columbia has always been a beacon
Yeah.
for this topic, right? And it's always a hot button topic. But I don't know. I think that, in all honesty, that it's just going to be another one of we've already looked at the fact that opium production in Afghanistan has gone up to a record high since the United States has been there.
Yeah.
And the United States before, people always try to make the claims, oh yeah, the Afghani people and the Taliban are growing opium before, and this has always been a part of their system. Before the Taliban left, they burnt so much of the crops of opium because they knew that this is what it would be used for, right?
Yeah.
And there's a wicked documentary that I put up a while ago on Twitter and stuff. It's called OxyContin Express. Talks about the epidemic of pharmaceutical drug abuse, specifically OxyContin, which is a opiate derivative and essentially synthetic heroin, right? So again, Joe Rogan got me onto this documentary, wicked documentary done by this couple. It shows this guy who's he's addicted to OxyContin, and he tells the story of his life. His wife died in the bed next to him, right? Like in the bed right beside him, she died. He woke up and she was curled up like with her arms over her body, and he like pulled her hair back and she was blue, and he found out that she was dead. So she died, and then his brother also died from overdose, and this thing follows him around, and this whole documentary, and shows how he gets the OxyContin, how many people come from out of state to Florida because Florida is like the capital of it, right? And they have pain clinics like on every corner. So they were showing that, and from that you could see that this, and the guy in the actual video, the guy who's getting the documentary done on him that they're following around, he died a year ago, like 1 year ago, right? Okay. So it's straight up showing that this drug, when abused, can really screw you over. And the problem is that people think, okay, this is coming up from people that are doing other recreational drugs that are gateway drugs and coming into pharmaceuticals as a reason, as a result of that.
Yeah.
But what it is that you have people that they go to their doctor and they find out that they need a knee surgery or any type of major surgery. They go there, and then you come back, and when you come back from major surgery, your doctor's going to prescribe you just a bunch of different types of painkillers, right? Codeine, OxyContin, or some type of opiate derivative. These kind of things always come up. Codeine is in like T3s and stuff, right? So what people don't realize then is that those drugs that are given to you during that time are actually, like, a lot of the drugs that are pushed in the market have a lot of major addictive quality to them. They're really habit forming, right? So people will have a cycle. They'll have an actual dosage cycle during their time that they're into recovery, and when they come out, of this surgery with having their bones might be fine, or post-op they might be fine, up and running, but now they have a sudden addiction to OxyContin, right? And that has also led, from that transition, people have transitioned into heroin itself, and now heroin use has gone up so much in the States too. And I wonder where the heroin is coming from. Afghanistan, right? Which, that's crazy. 90% of the world's heroin comes from Afghanistan. 90% of the world's opium, right? So that includes recreational use and pharmaceutical use. So that's crazy. Like, you hear those numbers, and it's mind-boggling to see that people don't address this all the time. It's a crazy epidemic. Like, Madchild, who we talk about, who's like a local artist. He's from East Vancouver. He's the lead singer of Swollen Members. He's been talking about for ages the fact that he used to pop oxys and stuff. And he was an oxy head himself. Here's a line in that song Night Vision. It's "Don't pop oxy, shit'll rock your memory," right? So he's saying to everybody the fact that these drugs are not to be fucked with. You really don't know what you're to expect, because you're given these pharmaceutical drugs. You go to a pharmacy, you get your prescription filled. It seems so legit, and then you go home, and OxyContin can be snorted, it can be injected, it can be smoked, and people are doing it all, right? And
It's
they had
kind of
to,
worrying me, man. It makes me think that one of our viewers might be like, really?
yeah, I know. Well,
You can't-
people have realized it a lot. Like almost every person that has any knowledge of drugs knows about oxys, right?
yeah.
And the thing is that like they actually had to change the form of the oxy from like a type that you could crush up and snort to they had to change it to some, I think it's like a gel like neo oxy or something. I can't remember what the actual name of the drug is, but they had to change the form of it because people were snorting it so much. So that's when you see that, and I studying in school and stuff. I've seen firsthand that people also get into these attention drugs, these these ADHD drugs
Adderall,
like Adderall,
benzodiazepines.
yeah. Benzodiazepines are more for what's it called, anxiety and stuff,
Hmm.
but like Adderall and Ritalin,
Nobody
right?
studies better than somebody who has no anxiety.
Yeah, that's true, right? But like Ritalin and Adderall, like it's you see people, they pop them in their mouths or they snort them too, because it's like it has a similar effect. I guess it's a different absorption rate when it hits
Yeah.
when it goes through your nose and stuff.
Yeah.
In a similar way with many drugs, that you have different reactions from different types of different methods of taking it into your body.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's crazy, man. Like it's a major epidemic, and people don't really address that. They don't address the fact that sometimes it's parents themselves that are providing the rides and suggesting to the kids to go on these drugs. The guy that made what's it called Adderall on his deathbed, he said that ADHD was actually a manufactured diagnosis. Like it's not real. It's something that they made up to
Mhm.
push this pharmaceutical drug,
Mhm.
right? And that's the guy who invented Adderall, right?
Yeah.
So, and Adderall is the closest thing chemically, I believe, based on its carbon chain to cocaine out there.
Mhm.
So that's you give somebody like something that's like that in a similar texture, and they now know the dosage that they're taking, so that like it's not like stuff that's been chopped
Yeah.
up or whatever in the streets. They know exactly what they're doing, right? And
Mhm.
and people are still overdosing though.
Yeah. You heard it from us, folks.
Yeah.
It is government government okayed cocaine use under an assumed name.
Yeah.
But it is it kind of leads you to a scary thought, things that make their way to the public eye, that have shareholders that are so easily cemented into the society that we have, can actually be something so scary, something steathed in corruption. And
I mean, it's for
we
that
get this
reason.
idea though that if it's out there, if it's got shareholders, if it is accepted by officialdom, then it's safe, it's okay, it's there for a reason, it's legitimate. And in the same way that I think we all realize that those we look up to don't always have the answer for us, that may not even have our best interest at heart, we know that the things we might look up to, institutions, aren't there for the best reasons. And that's really plain to see, and it almost goes without saying. But I think we have to really acquaint ourselves with the notion that, yeah, like you said, this is kind of a corrupt system we're looking at. It's broken. If anything has an addictive quality, you can almost guarantee that it'll find its way in some form or fashion into the marketplace as a FDA approved, as whatever association sanctioned consumable product. For that
Yeah,
reason.
and for that, on that actual topic itself, I highly suggest. I'm not sure if you watched this either. It's a movie called Thank You for Smoking. Have you heard
Oh
of it?
yes, I've seen that.
You've seen it?
Yeah,
Okay.
movie.
Wicked movie. Kind of shows how the system actually works
Mhm.
and just how cutthroat it is for trying to get advertising and all this stuff out
Yeah.
there for smoking, right?
Using PR, using spin, and I think that's something
Insanity.
people really. We all know we're getting a raw deal. We know we're getting screwed when we watch television. We know we're being brainwashed, but I think it helps a lot really to study public relations. Really study public relations and what it's used for, because it wasn't always known as public relations. It's known as propaganda.
Yeah, because that's what it is. It's a distraction and stuff, right? Like
Not even a distraction. It can dress things that are harmful as things that are positive. Look at breakfast cereals. Look at everything that General Mills cereal pumps out. Do you think
Yeah.
that eating those things on a regular basis are good for you?
Yeah,
No, then that's
crazy. It can't be, right?
The opposite is very true.
Yeah.
You wonder why, there's an obesity epidemic among children.
That's why people ask. They're like, if all these major corporations that make these genetically modified foods, we'd like to see what's in their fridges.
Yeah.
Right? Because I bet you're not going to find that stuff, right? So I don't know. It's crazy. People are, like you said, like I don't know, propaganda and diversion seem to be like, for me, just two different arms of the same monster kind of thing, right? And it's just like you have propaganda is more deliberate, whereas diversion is, I believe, a form of propaganda too, though, because now you have, instead of people thinking about what they should be thinking about, they're obsessing over the fact that, oh my God, Ben Affleck is the new Batman. Like, people have been going crazy over this thing, right?
Never heard that.
Yeah, Ben Affleck's gonna be the new Batman in There's gonna be a Superman Spider-Man movie, Superman Batman movie. Sorry,
Okay.
it's like Batman versus Superman.
If he doesn't do the voice, he's gonna be better than Christian Bale.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but like, so it was interesting. Like, people just, you have all these different things that people obsess over, Jersey Shore or whatever, the royal baby in England, right? And it just like gets people's attentions, even for however short amount of time in your day. It gets your attention in that direction, right?
Yeah. And
so that's the thing, though. They want to monopolize your day, right? Because when you're at work, you're not thinking about like everything that you should be thinking about. And they're like, okay, what's gonna happen when this person gets home?
Yeah.
Okay, what about on the road? Right, on the road they're gonna be listening to radio, right? We gotta commercialize this and get as many commercials in there as possible. Okay, when they get home, they're gonna flick on the TV. Well, they gotta be hearing ads from that too. And that's one thing that I've noticed, that since people cut the cord, the cut the cord statement nowadays, that people are getting rid of conventional unplugged. They're getting rid of conventional cable and satellite TV and all this stuff, and they're just subscribing to Netflix and getting streaming from other websites. And it's interesting because people don't want to see commercials anymore. Commercials are ridiculous, and that's something that I noticed that was annoying, was that there was much less commercials on YouTube in Europe than there was in the States. In North America and the States.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy here. Every time you watch a video, like, it's like a 15-second commercial.
Yeah.
And I remember when it wasn't like that at all. Like, YouTube's, the biggest thing about YouTube was that there wasn't ads everywhere. But I don't know, man. It's really changing, and for that reason, I think people are trying to get, like we were saying originally before we went on this tangent a bit, people are trying to get away from these distractions, and they're trying to use venues like meditation or yoga or very alternative sciences, what people used to call pseudosciences, for treating their ailments too, right?
Yeah, and just cutting now, because I think back there we were a little in danger of painting up, everybody as bought off by this. And I think that there is so much evidence to the contrary that people intuitively know when they're being fucked with. And pardon my French, I think that we need to sort of step it back and say that there are a lot of intelligent people making a lot of great steps towards reducing the amount of time we spend in front of TVs. We know it's bad. It might be, the thing that's not talked about, the elephant in the room, that's still seemingly okay in a lot of places. But I think most people generally know that these things aren't okay. It's not okay to resort to pharmaceuticals. It's not okay that we have a media system geared the way it is. It's not okay that we have companies benefiting from people's addictions the way they do. I think nobody that has a clear picture of that is on the other side of it. And that's absolutely true. I think there's a lot of people turning to meditation now. When I listen to podcasts, there's one I really like. It's called Audio Dharma. And this is a California-based group that simply sits together. They have a speaker, and then they open it up into question periods. But it's not even what most people equate to meditation. Most people think people sitting they got their fingers in this position and they're going om repeatedly, and meditation is so much more than that. There is a huge aspect of it being breathing, call it Kriya Yoga,
Yeah,
call it
see,
what you like.
breathing was
Yeah.
that was one thing that originally when I was getting into meditation, like, I had no idea what I was really doing at all, and it was a lot from what people had told me and different like things that I'd learned from older people and people that had experienced meditation.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't first-hand experience, and I didn't really know what to expect. One of the biggest obstacles that you come across when you're trying to meditate is trying to just control your mind, right? Get it to a point where a zeroness where you can kind of go in a positive direction or whatever.
Yeah.
And my biggest thing was that I couldn't do that. I couldn't bring my mind into that state. And what I realized, though, something that somebody just suggested to me out of the blue, and I started just doing it, was controlling your breathing to the point that you said, okay, ultimately, I want to get it to the point that it's almost a minute in.
Yeah.
So a minute inhaling and then a minute exhaling.
Yeah.
Right? If you can get it to even like 20, 25, 30 seconds spending on inhaling and then exhaling,
yeah,
that will change your thought process so quickly. Like it's insane just how quickly that can, like, just breathing alone. Because people always said, oh yeah, that was something that we'd hear people stress. Meditating is all about breathing, regulating your breathing, figuring out your body, and yoga is so much about breathing too.
Yeah.
I really didn't understand it until I started applying some of those techniques that people just like, because you're not really taught. People give that statement that it's all about breathing, but they don't really teach you practically how to incorporate that.
Let me just take it back for a second because you cut me off. Now, it's more than just meditation, and I was talking about these people that have the Audio Dharma podcast down in California, but they actually sit and they hold discussions on what is the self, what is the purpose of emotions, what are these things that we account for as part of ourselves that really just don't get talked about. They'll sit and have a question period about these things. And I think that's just as big a part of meditation as the actual sitting and breathing and aloneness, is actually discussing the parts of the self.
Oh, yeah.
That's so important.
No, definitely. That's something that's present in a lot of religious practices too and stuff. They say, essentially coming together in a group, right?
Yeah.
And a community setting kind of, and discussing the problems or the social problems or the inner problems, get introspective with people. And it says, like, that's something that you see in a lot of cultures, but it kind of goes down a weird direction when you get all these strange rituals in that process, and that kind of distort the ultimate image that you need.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely, man, like sitting down and discussing, because meditation is a time for bringing up a lot of thoughts in your head and understanding like what your problems are, or getting to the deep part of yourself. Now that in itself, so many other people have experienced different types of that and like different levels of that you can learn so much, like, just from hearing somebody else's perspective.
Yeah.
And that's something that people don't take into consideration always, right?
Yeah.
So,
I was actually reading Osho's book, The Art of Living, today. Yeah. And it had some great parts in it. And one of the pieces that stuck out to me was the idea that, in an average setting in a coffee shop, say, we don't just have two people sitting down to communicate. It's four, really. Because you have two genuine beings, and then you have two masked individuals. And the best that you can do when you're communicating is to have these two masks meet and to try to show the best of themselves. Now, the whole idea through meditation and actually going to the source of the things, because really everything that we're experiencing is inside us. In fact, everything that we know of is basically set within the receptors of our brains, in our sensory organs that allow us to perceive reality as we do. So it's all within us, and it's hard for people to accept, but when you get upset by a scene, you think, oh, like, that guy was wrong to budge in front of me. It's actually your choice to feel that way. It's your choice, and it's your responsibility to maintain control of that. But the idea is that through meditation, through actually handling these things and fleshing them out, staring a problem in the face is the fastest way to make it go away. Yeah. But the idea is we want to lower these masks and to be able to actually enter into communion with another person. So it's essentially like merging two psyches where the individual isn't lost, but they gain everything from each other. Yeah. And this might come back to the whole idea that meditation is, namby-pamby, wishy-washy, whatever. But I challenge people, examine the answer to this. How do we make a better society? Do we institute better systems and just allow people to act as they are within them? Or do we actually try to find the root of our problems individually, and through working out our own problems, be they what they are, and coming together as better people, would that not make a better system?
Yeah, the thing is that when you have people that come together, you fill in each other's gaps, right? That's
Yeah.
the thing. Like, if we all were like these weird shaped puzzle pieces, that's kind of what happens, is that when you bring people together, you figure out where each person's wrong, and you often will find that people have been through similar struggles as you, and you'll just it's definitely true that you need to have that that communal like setting
Yeah.
for just kind of sitting down and
Yeah.
exercising your ability to actually like talk about the things that are important with other people, right?
Yeah.
And people used to do that. I don't know, like it's changed. Our society has changed a lot in the way that we relax, right? Our parents' generation, they used to sit and they would talk a lot, right? We'd always be confused as kids. Like, I remember I'd be in the room and I'd be like, how can they just sit there and talk for so long and, not do anything else? Like, they just sit there and talk while we'd be playing like Nintendo, or we're horsing around in the next room, whatever. But now, like, that's something that people, our time that we spend, our recreational leisure time, is more spent, in social media, in things like TV or whatever, and people are talking less in this type of setting, right? So that's the thing, is that if we can kind of start to get back towards that in society, that'll be something that's definitely going to benefit us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing, though, that you can kind of see that certain parts of our society are failing, but people are trying to see the other options now, right?
Yeah.
And that's why there's kind of a movement in the world of trying to make an actual positive change around the world.
And I think you can see this in the world. Like, I challenge people, go out and see where things are collapsing. And I believe that where things are actually starting to fall apart is where people are actually so disconnected from one another. They rely entirely on outside sources for their information.
Yeah.
They don't look at themselves at all, and they rely on, drugs or whatever to get them through the day.
Yeah.
And the places that are actually holding themselves together, and things are still okay, that's where people are trying to get that communal spirit going. Places like Athens, where they've actually got their own internet system going. If you look at actually a lot of places in Africa where they're still living in very tight-knit communities, they're much better suited at handling problems. I'm reminded, if anybody hasn't read the book Shantram, I highly recommend it. One of the best books I've ever read. There's one part in the book, and this is not a spoiler, but there's one part in the book actually where the main character, it's actually his real life. He's living in the slums, and one day there's a commotion outside, and one of the individuals living in the slums with him is actually beating his wife. He's an alcoholic, and this is just another episode of many. And everybody gathers around to see what's happened. And so the man, his name is Joseph, the alcoholic, steps out. He's drunk, and his wife falls out after him, and she's bloodied and bruised. And because they're so tightly knit in the slum, you have the women of the slum come and take his wife away and tend to her and see that she gets the care, while the men take Joseph. They actually verbally berate him. They hit him for hitting his wife, not brutally, but they let him know what he did. And for the rest of the day, they stand around him. They make sure he can't leave. By now he's parched. He's just way past drunk, but they won't allow him to drink anything but rum. And that's all he can do until he's finally finished an entire bottle. They essentially break him and tell him, Joseph, you killed your wife. and they tell him this is what happened. She doesn't actually die, but they say, Joseph, you've done something terrible, but we're going to give you a chance. We're going to allow you to make amends. You're going to work for 6 months. You're not going to touch a drop of alcohol. You're going to use all of your money to repair the damage you've done. And your wife, who actually is alive, you're going to take her on a vacation. If you can do this, you can come and live here. You can stay. Everything's fine. And so that's how they handle a problem. And that's how it's done, like in a very tight-knit community.
Interesting.
Now, I probably butchered a bit of that. It didn't go exactly to key, but that's why I encourage people go and check out that book. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's just an example. And I don't think you see that play out in places where, people are just totally disconnected.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely like a book worth checking out. But yeah, I think it's a good point to end it.
Yeah.
I do apologize to people. We have a fan running right now. You may have heard it in the back, but yeah, it's pretty cooked out right now here in the podcast room. We didn't really leave any windows open, so the sun's been beating down this room all day. So we had to have this fan on. So you might hear a bit of background sound, but again, this was fun getting back into the flow of things. And yeah, there's gonna be more coming. We're looking. A few of our guests kind of got shuffled around a little bit. Gary Mangat, he ended up getting busy with some of his training camps and stuff, and he had to go back to Montreal because he's actually training. He's training back there in Montreal again. So and we do still have the individual who is an astrophysicist who's still gonna come in, and a couple of different people we have lined up. So there's still some really cool stuff in the future. And honestly, I want to mention to everybody that it's scary for me that, initially we expected that there would be people that would want to watch the videos just to see like what the idea behind the podcast is, kind of get like a little bit of a understanding of what we're doing. And like they may have watched it for a couple seconds and turned it off. The crazy thing about this is that the fourth video that we put out, the fourth podcast, has like over 100 hits. And I mean, once I upload it, I usually just leave it, and maybe once in a blue moon I check it out. So that means that about 100 people who are not me and Graeme have watched this video. So yeah. I don't know if that's one person repeatedly watching it, like a crazy obsessed fan, which would be crazy. I don't think we actually have fans yet, but maybe curious people. But the crazy thing is that if there's 100 people out there, the idea behind this podcast, it becomes different in the way that we perceive it because it's on the internet. We think, okay, it's just 100 people on YouTube. That's not even that much. But imagine if 100 people were standing in front of us and listening to us every single week. People would think that we were running a cult, first of all, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, we're just trying to get information out there. This is always a fun way of doing it. This is going to be coming around for quite a bit. It's something that I've been wanting to do, like I said, and I honestly have so much fun. From the looks of it, you do too.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
So for that reason, we're going to keep pushing these out. And thank you again to everybody who's been just pouring in support, giving different suggestions and stuff. It's been really good taking in the criticism. Any hating out there, I haven't even heard yet. So
that's the wonderful part about being so small, I guess.
Yeah. So we're happy and want to keep doing this. Thanks a lot to everybody, and see you guys next time.